Okay, Floss, citizen lawyer. First of all, I'd just like to make a disclaimer that yes, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a citizen of New Zealand. SOS, Scotland, Northern Ireland, England, Australia. SOS to Queen Elizabeth. Our countries have been usurped. They're trying to bring down the Commonwealth. They're interfering with all of our Commonwealth laws, and for some reason, the powers that be in the Commonwealth are not standing up for our Commonwealth laws and not helping us. They've come up with this story in all of our Commonwealth countries called the decolonization movement, where they're trying to take the entire country back and put it into the hands of the individual tribes. They've separated all the tribes in New Zealand, Australia, and Canada. This is all being done, I believe, in my conspiracy theory, by America. And the church, the Catholic Church, the Islamic Church, and the Jewish Church are all involved in this, in my conspiracy theory. I've started the battle to bring in our 1688 to prevent them from doing what they're doing. The United Nations wants all the people in our countries of Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. They've designated them to be nothing more than third world entities. They want the entire country out of the hands of the Commonwealth, out of the hands of the monarch, and put into the hands of the individual tribes. And they have separated all of the tribes. They're taking all of our resources, putting them into the hands of the individual tribes, and then from there, they're putting it all into the Indigenous rights under the control and the oversight of the United Nations. They are presently in New Zealand trying to infuse all of the United Nations laws into our country. And and as far as I know, I'm the only one that's trying to stop this. Now, I've tried to get our 1688 Bill of Rights, which is the law of all the Commonwealth countries. I've tried to get it into the courts, and I'm coming up with quite a bit of resistance from the courts, from getting my case into the courts, and there does seem to be a little bit of skullduggery going on down at the courts. I don't know if there is or there not isn't, but I'm feeling like that is the case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start reading my cases and telling you all exactly what I'm doing and where I'm going. It takes a little bit of understanding for the moment. When I first start telling it to you, you might well understand. Some people pick it up quickly, some people don't pick it up at all, and some people pick it up slowly. So what I'm going to do is I've got like 3, 4, 5 court cases here that have been all going on, and I've been dealing with them all by myself. But now that I'm noticing that I'm getting resistance from the courts, I'm suspecting that there is corruption within the courts. I know there's corruption within the Parliament. They have filled New Zealand Parliament with more than 60% of people, of foreigners, including many, many, many refugees, many, many people that have been in New Zealand for less than 10 years, people that have come from Mexico, Somalian prison camps. We don't know who these people are. They turned up, and we've got Iranians, we've got, what else have we got in there? We've got Israelis, we've got, you name the nationality, we've got them in our parliament, and they're all fighting for privileges for their own specific nationalities. What the governments have done is they've made deals with these people, deals for votes, in my opinion, visas for votes that have been, I have got the evidence, I'm going to bring it up later, but they are promising visa entries for thousands upon thousands of these specific nationalities on the condition that they all vote in the way that they're told to vote. So I am suspecting that there is a lot of voting fraud going on here. There is votes for visas. There's a lot going on. But I'm going to tell you where I am with my court cases. And if anyone wants to join me, any of you common law people that have been on this road and are going nowhere, I'm going to ask you if you have knowledge about it. I won't go outside the 1688 Bill of Rights. All our laws are in there. That's where our common law sits, our Protestant law, standing up for the Protestants. So if anyone wants to come and help me out with this, you can come and let me know, and we'll do some Zoom meetings and we'll work it out. We're looking for people from Australia. We're looking for people from Northern Ireland, Scotland, England. We're looking for all of us to come together in one group, and we're going to use the proper laws and go through the proper courts. Now, let's get into New Zealand. It's all happening in New Zealand. I'll have to go through some of the laws, and here's some background. We have got this thing here in New Zealand, and everyone knows it's called the 1990 Bill of Rights, New Zealand. All right? Now, this is what's called an ordinary law. It is an ordinary law, and it's not a constitutional law. We know it's an ordinary law because constitutions cannot be changed. But in this law, they have actually got a justified limitations, where this is where the United Nations, the WHO, the United Nations, they all come in through here. Now, what you're looking here is, if you go to the view hole, what you'll see here is that this is to affirm the protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. This is not actually a New Zealand law. A lot of people think that this is their rights because they've been lied to. But this is actually a workers' rights where immigrants that were coming into New Zealand, Islamists, Jewish people and Catholic people cannot stand under the 1688 Commonwealth law, because it is a Protestant law, and it forbids any of their religions from governing over us, Protestants. So we come under the 1688 for our protections. So the United Nations, because they wanted to import thousands of refugees into our country, the United Nations is a non-binding law. Like a parasite, they set up this 1990 Bill of Rights, and they attached the United Nations onto it through Section 19 in the freedom of discrimination. Now, this law was created, this 1990 Bill of Rights was created in 1990, and it had a blocker here called justified limitations. It tells you here the application of this law. The application of this law is only for any acts created in Parliament by the judicial, the executive, and the legislative branches of Parliament. This law was in regards to that. It had nothing to do with our Protestant and our constitutional rights. Now, this has occurred in England as well, and Scotland, and Ireland, and Australia, and Canada. And then they put on here this justified limitations. What it was created was that all of these rights came from the United Nations, and they included religious freedoms. However, when religious freedoms were repugnant to our Protestant rights, okay, so their Islamic rights allow them to decapitate us Protestants if we speak against them. That would be something that would be prevented with their justified limitations, right? So that's what this was created for: Islamists, Islamic people, Jewish people, and Catholic people who all followed their biblical rights, and they were not of the Protestant people who didn't have those same kind of rights. So we got the 1688 Bill of Rights, which was the Protestant rights, which was used by all Commonwealth countries. Now, after this, when this law was created, this thing here, S28, it's called S28. It says that any existing rights shall not be abrogated or restricted by this 1990 Bill of Rights, basically. It says some other stuff, but basically that. And the deception here, there was quite a deception here, because the government, when they speak, they will often say Bill of Rights, and then they will say Bill of Rights. And they're talking about two different things. This 1990 Bill of Rights has no, they can use it if they want to, or they cannot use it if they don't want to. Whereas the 1688 Bill of Rights, all elections and all parliament and all courts are based on that constitutional Commonwealth right. And so when they created this, all Protestants that came under the 1688 were exempt from any laws that they created through this 1990 Bill of Rights. And simply because it has the justified limitations, and it was in regards to the international law and stuff like that. International law is usually not permitted in domestic law. They pulled a sneaky. They got this instituted into New Zealand law, and then 3 years later, they added the Human Rights Act of 1993. When they added the Human Rights Act of 1993, the United Nations started imposing all of their laws into our country, because they had taken all of our native people, scooped them up, and put them into the Indigenous rights with all the third world countries. And what they're trying to do now is to remove the Commonwealth. They're bringing down the Commonwealth, and they want all of the lands that they say belong to these 200,000 people, even though we are 3 million strong. The 200,000 natives, they want the entire country placed back into their hands, and then they want the entire country, all their resources, forestries, fisheries, waterways, they want it divided between the tribes. And the United Nations will negotiate, since all of these tribes are now under the care of the Third World United Nations Indigenous, that means that when all of these resources are put into this tribe hands, it then goes under the oversight and the care of the United Nations. It's nothing short of a huge territorial land grab of all of our Commonwealth countries. Now, 3 years later, they came up with KII. There's actually a lot more here, but I'm only just going to tell you this little bit today. So 3 years later, they came up with KII, which says the desirability of New Zealand becoming bound by international instruments on human rights. Now, by the 1688 Bill of Rights, that I've already explained this to you, but I'll explain it. By the 1688 Bill of Rights, we are under the instrument of Her Majesty. Now, it says here, whom it pleased Almighty God to make the glorious instrument of delivering this kingdom from popery and arbitrary power. This Bill of Rights has many restrictions on all of the religions, and so they're presently trying to get rid of it. So what they're trying to do is to put all of the natives of our countries under the United Nations instrument, but when they go under the instrument of the United Nations, since the United Nations is not voted in by any of it, their law has no standing. So what they've done is, like a parasite, they've attached it to our 1688. And what they're doing is this quick two-step. It's when they want to, when they want to avoid all of the restrictions in the 1688, they jump into this international instrument where all of the religions have a lot of freedoms to do what they want. They make all their laws in there, and then they attach it to our constitutional law and domestic law where it has power over us. So all United Nations law has no power over us in our individual countries. But as you can see here, when they piggyback it on, then they put it on to the 1990, and then through that, they're trying to create a similar declaration for them, and they're trying to have two. So they've got two bills of rights. One is the 1990, which has no power, and one is the 1688, which has power. And the only way that a country can trade functionally in the international community is by constitutional law. But the constitutional law has got too many restrictions for these religions to function in our countries. So they've come up with another one to sit beside it, and they're doing a quick to-fro and a quick to-fro, and they're working between them, and it's just a very sneaky little thing that they're doing. So I will just point out that just recently, the United Kingdom usually did not advertise their 1688, but they've just recently put it up here. And you can go and look there for the United Kingdom, and your true rights, oh, where did I put it? Your true rights stand here under William and Mary. Now, for all you common law people, the only way that you can remove a government is by using this law here. You need to show how your parliament has disobeyed or has been repugnant to this law. If you can show how your parliament has been repugnant to this law, this is the way that you can have your parliament removed and a temporary parliament put in place to take over and to put everything back in the place that it was supposed to be. So this is the only way that you can do it. And I know this, and I know this law, so I have been attempting to do that in New Zealand. So one of the laws in the 1688, so what had happened was in New Zealand is that in the year, right, I have to give you a bit of background to the various cases, all right? So you'll all have to try and keep up with me to what happened. All right. I'm just going to give you a very short background of this case here. This case is called the Arthur Taylor case. And in our 1688 Bill of Rights, I'll just have to come back here again. In our 1688 Bill of Rights, when Parliament does, oh, I'll have to do it on the New Zealand one. It's better. The New Zealand one is a bit clearer. Right, when you want to have this Parliament stand down, you have to go to the court, and you go to the court and you ask for a declaration. You list the things that they have done against your right, and then you see here, subjects' liberties to be allowed. You ask the court, you pray, you make a prayer to the court, and you ask the court for a declaration. When the court gives you a declaration to say, yes, they have violated these rights, then you take that declaration and you give it to the minister or the police or the court will send it to the Governor-General, and the Governor-General will force Parliament to stand down. Now, that's the only way that you can get a Parliament out. Now, what they did with this case here, Arthur Taylor, is that they went to the court and they used the 1990 Bill of Rights, which is called an ordinary law. So this one here is called a constitutional law, and it has huge power. The Governor-General has power using it. The Majesty and the Privy Council have power with it. The Commonwealth has power with it. The Royal Navy and the Royal Army have power using it. All right? So all of their powers are rested in this constitutional law, and this constitutional law can't be overridden by any court, by any parliament, by any majesty, by any religious leader. It belongs to you. It's yours. And it has been around for 400 years. All right? Now, this here is called an ordinary law or a subordinate law. It can be changed by the flick of a pen. It doesn't need any royal assent. It doesn't need any courtly assent. They can change it as they please. But if they make any adjustments to it that interferes with this, you can go to the court and you can ask the judge for your declaration, which is what I was doing. And I was using S28. I said to the court, all these other rights here are not affected, and therefore your Health Act and United Nations WHO law, all of that has no power over me, because I do not stand under your human rights law. I stand under my Protestant law, and I'm protected by that. And your Health Act, your injections, your all of those arbitrary, your lock me up in my house without any conviction, that all comes under forfeiture of person, and that all comes under forfeiture of person without conviction. Stopping me from speaking, that comes under my free speech. Forcing me to have injections, that comes under cruel and unusual punishment, all of that. So now I have to go back to Arthur Taylor for a minute. Now, Arthur Taylor in 2017, he had gone to the court and he has said, we want to have a declaration called the Declaration of Inconsistency in regards to this 1990. We want to be able to go to the court and get a declaration just like you can get a declaration under your constitutional law. Now, I opposed that. The Attorney General opposed that declaration. Everybody opposed it because they said that the courts are only permitted to give declarations because the courts and the Governor-General and the Majesty hold their place only by the will of the people. Then they're only allowed to make declarations when it is in regards to the will of the people, when the will is here. But the Attorney General lost the case, and he appealed it, and he lost that case. And there was a court ruling saying that the 1990 Bill of Rights, which is an ordinary law, would be permitted to have a declaration. And so I had written a letter, right? Arthur Taylor, he's going out, right? So we'll keep you down there because I'm always needing you. And I'll keep you down there because I'm always needing you. So I had written a letter. My name's up there for everyone to see, so it's not much point in Cape. Everyone calls me Cape Floss, but you'll see I have several names, and this is my mother's name. So I'm obviously going to have to be revealing my names because you're going to be seeing my court cases anyway. So I wrote to Chris Farfoy, and I had not realised about the Alfred Taylor case. I had only seen his bill that he was putting through to Parliament to get this declaration called Declaration of Inconsistency. Let's be clear. We've got 1688 Bill of Rights, which is constitutional law under the Commonwealth for all of our countries. Got 1990 Bill of Rights, which is an ordinary law, and each of our countries have one of these Human Rights Act. Then you've got the 1993 Human Rights. Now that is United Nations law, of which they're trying to parasitically attach onto us, all right? So I had written to Chris Farfoy, and I had said to him, I oppose this Declaration of Inconsistency, because I have said under S1, here I'd used the white supremacy law, and the supremacy law, which is here, forbids any foreigners, any prelates, any states or potentates to have any jurisdiction or any power or any superiority in our country, so help me God. And I had said that this 1990 Bill of Rights, since it attached itself to the Human Rights Act, and since it had created KII, which gives international instruments power within our country, I had complained to Chris Farfoy, because I had said to Chris Farfoy that goes against our supremacy law, and therefore it is repugnant to our Protestant protections from the various religions that would like to see us decapitated if we speak against them. So that's why I had opposed his declaration of inconsistency. In the meantime, all right, so everybody, I think you understand that. So there's going to be two declarations, one from the ordinary law and one from our Commonwealth law, all right? The one from the so I had not heard from Chris Farfoy, okay? Hope everybody's going to be able to stay with me. Now, here's an example of what a declaration looks like. Now, this declaration was created, it's a bit small, isn't it? I don't know if you'll be able to see it. This declaration, I can't really make it very big. I'll just read it to you. I think I can find another one, actually. Oh, I can't. All right. This declaration was created in 1865. In 1865, the New Zealand Maori went to the courts and asked, well, not only them, we also, there was an act. They went to the court, they asked for a declaration to be declared natural-born subjects of Her Majesty the Queen. Now, all Aborigines from Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and all the islands, every single native in the Commonwealth countries went under this declaration, and they all become subjects and they all became protected under the Protestant laws, along with all the people that have been shipped out to these countries for their protections against the religions that have been in their countries and were trying to take them over. So the New Zealand Maori went and got a declaration, And this was declared that the jurisdiction of the Queen's Courts of Law would extend over all persons and all properties of all of Her Majesty's subjects within the colony. And this applied to all Commonwealth countries. And so they all went under this. So this is what a declaration is all about. It's an important document. Now, I went to the court. Now, here's where I'm going to start talking about my court case. I went to the court with a very simple declaration against the Health Act and the COVID response and all the injections and all the lockdowns, and I used a simple law. I used two laws. Under the 1990, I used S28, that our other rights and freedoms are not affected by the 1990 Bill of Rights, which they attached the Health Act to, using justified limitations. So they used the 1990 Health and the 2020 Health Act, they attached it to the 1990, and they said, all of you have got to have these injections, and all of you have got to be locked down, and all of you have got to leave your jobs. And I used S28, and I said, under S28, we are not bound by all of your subordinate laws. I said, I stand under our constitutional law of the 1688 Bill of Rights, which is S1, and then under S1, I said that it came under cruel and unusual punishments being inflicted upon us by the injections and by the not knowing if we would be getting side effects or not. I said that was a cruel and unusual punishment, one. Secondly, the locking of us in our houses is a forfeiture of our particular person, without any conviction. They just said, you've got to be locked in your house because you might have a disease. But there was no conviction, there was no proof that we had anything wrong with us. So I went to the court with that. Now, here's where the problem begins. This S28 has never been used from 1990 until 2020, 30 years. S28 has never, ever been used. And I attached S28. I filed my case on the 22nd of December, all right? 22nd of December, and it was a very simple case. It only spoke against the Health Act, and it used S28, and it used S1 of the 1688 Bill of Rights. And I asked the judge for a simple declaration. I asked the judge for a declaration saying that my rights existed without requiring any specific action. I just wanted a declaration to say, yes, your 1688 rights exist, and yes, under S28, that applies to your 1688 rights. And so if you stand under that, you're not bound by any. And I was going to use that declaration to order the Health Act and all of those to stand down. All right? Now, watch these dates. That was on the 22nd of December that I put that in. All right? Mysteriously, on the 6th of January, so I put my case in on the 22nd. On the 6th of January, they put in a case, the right to work. They did not use They used the 1990 because the 1990 is only a workers' rights. It applies to all immigrants and all refugees that come into our countries, but it is a workers' rights, and it doesn't really apply to us people in regards to our constitutional right of the Commonwealth. And when they put in this case, they attached the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant. They attached it to S28. And the opposition said S28 does not apply to the United Nations law. And the judge said only the High Court can decide if the United Nations laws have any jurisdiction in regards to S28. Now, in the event that United Nations law can be attached to S28, what does this mean? This means that every single United Nations declaration, every single right from any country, if they can be attached to S28, that means that they are exempt from the blocker of the 1990s. So that means that the American Constitution can be attached to S28. Any United Nations law created pre-1990 can be attached to S28. So I opened up with my case a hornet's nest. However, I am very suspicious because S28 had not been used by the United Nations or any other rights group or any other lawyer for 30 years. When my case went in on the 22nd, suddenly they came up with this attachment on the 6th of January. On the 17th of January, I received a letter from the court saying, we have not accepted your case because you have not put the Te Reo language, the Maori language, onto your cover letter. They said, if you want to continue with your case, please put the Te Reo language introduction on your cover letter. In the meantime, I received a letter because I wrote to the Chris Barfoy's office and I complained to them because I had said to them, I have not received a letter about my complaint of the Declaration of Inconsistency. And I received a letter on the 4th of February. I had just received this letter on the 4th of February. So I sent them the letter on the 21st of December, and then I sent my letter to the court on the 22nd. On the 4th of February, they replied back and they said that this is to do with the Arthur Taylor case, and it's already been lost in the court, and that it has already been decided in the court that they would be able to get a declaration of inconsistency in regards to the 1990. Now, okay, so I submitted on the 22nd of December they submitted this case using S28 on the 6th of January. On the 17th of January, I received a letter back, all right? But I didn't receive it we didn't see it until February. On the 4th of February, I received Chris Farfoy's letter, and we had to readjust our case because we wanted to add about our complaint of the Declaration of Inconsistency, because there were going to now be 2 Bills of Rights and 2 declarations, okay, one for each Bill of Rights. And so I wanted to add that to my case. In the meantime, their case was accepted on the 6th of January and heard in the court on the 25th of February. So it is very interesting to me. Oh, yes, that's right. It was very interesting to me that, okay, I'd sent it on the 22nd of January. They sent theirs on the 6th of, I sent mine 22nd of December. They sent theirs on the 6th of January. I got the letter back turning my case down on the 17th of January. I resubmitted my case, but I had only sent the application, and I hadn't attached the statement of claim. So I had waited 2 or 3 weeks for them to send me back a letter to say, you have to resend your statement of claim, because the first one is the application, and then the second part is the statement of claim. And I had originally sent the application and the statement of claim. But when they sent it back on the 17th, they just said you hadn't put the Maori writing heading. And so I put the Maori writing heading and just sent the application, right? But I hadn't resent the statement of claim. So they then did not inform me of that for another couple of weeks. And in the meantime, on the 25th of February, the Yardley case was heard, where they had used, in Section 44, had used S28. So that was on the 25th of February. So after that, I got a letter, finally, after I had made complaints to the court, because why had their case been accepted and my case had not been accepted? And then I got the letter asking for the statement of claim. I sent my statement of claim on the 3rd of March. I sent my statement of claim on the 3rd of March. And I never heard back from them. And then when I sent in my statement of claim on the 3rd of March, I had changed the whole thing, because I had added, one, I had complained about the Health Act. Secondly, I had complained about the human rights people adding S28 onto their case. And then I had complained about several other things as well. I'll write this up for you on a board in a minute so that you can see, or maybe I won't. I'll just, I'll put it to you more clearly in a minute. So I'm not going to tell you what my case was about just yet. I'll go over that in a minute. So then they turned around after that. Well, I'll put him out. Right, that can go out. That's the Chris Farfoy for the Declaration of Inconsistency. That's the Bill of Rights. That's my application for a binding declaration. That is my statement of claim. Oh, I've lost. All right, I have to put it up. All right. So, I haven't put this one up for you. All right. So, they, Attorney General versus Ryan Yardley, appeal. Oh no, there's actually an appeal. All right, never mind. All right, I don't need that. Anyway, what had happened was they had complained. Right, I'll put that out. Sorry about that. As you all know, that I'm there's a bit of a struggle. There's a lot to know about what's going on here. Okay. So when they got this, then suddenly they made an appeal on the 25th of March. So I submitted my new case, which is here, and on this case, right, let me make sure I've got the right one here. No. Here. All right. All right. So I had submitted my statement of claim finally on the 21st. I put it in on the 3rd. I put it in on the 3rd of March, all completed, right? And then they waited for about 2 weeks, and after I had complained to the court, they sent me back a letter saying, you have not signed 2 documents. Could you please sign? So this was several weeks later after I submitted on the 3rd of March, right? And then on the 21st of March, I received a letter telling me to sign 2 pieces of paper. And on the 25th of March, their appeal of the Yardley case was accepted on the 25th. And their appeal was asking for a declaration. Okay, I'm going to have to explain that for you a bit. The 1990 Bill of Rights has never had a declaration given to it by the courts since its inception, since 1990. After the Arthur Taylor case was lost by the Attorney General the court, the High Court, highest court, Supreme Court, ordered that a declaration could be made for the 1990 Bill of Rights. Chris Farfoy had submitted the bill to get it put into the Parliament, that the declarations were going to be able to be accepted by the court. All right? Never in its existence has the 1990 ever had a declaration of inconsistency. I submitted my case on the 22nd using S28, and it was sent back because I didn't have the Maori writing on it. On the 6th of January, they submitted their case, the Commission of the Human Rights submitted their case, and they used S28 for the first time, other than me, in the history since 1990, which I find suspicious. On the 17th, I was sent back my case on the 17th for not having the Maori writing. On the 25th of February, their case was won, and they had attached S28, and I redid my case, and I put all of that into there, and I submitted on the 3rd of March, asking for declarations, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, to say which declaration would prevail. So I'm asking which Bill of Rights, the 1990 or the 1688, holds all the power, and which declaration would prevail in the event that two declarations were passed by the court. I submitted that on the 3rd of March. Before Chris Farfoy's Bill of Rights, bill for the Declaration of Inconsistency has even been passed, the human rights have now gone to the appeal court and asked for a declaration in regards to the 1990. And in the meantime, my case was sent back again, asking for signatures with 2 or 3 weeks in between. Presently, I have resubmitted my signatures, but their case once again has been accepted in the court before my case, and asking for exactly the same thing as my case has been asking for, except for I'm asking for things in regards to the 1688, and they're asking for things in regards to the 1990, and it seems to me that there's a bit of skullduggery going on down at the courts. It seems to me that my cases are being submitted first, and their carbon copies of my cases are being submitted second, and they're coming up with these silly stories for me to block my case, and they're letting their cases pass through. So this has happened to me twice. So I'm saying that I'm very suspicious. In regards to my second case, which their case for a declaration has been put in front of my case, these were the declarations that I was asking for. First of all, I was asking that the 1865 Native Rights Act I don't know, this might be a better one. Here. So in my first declaration, I asked the court I said to please reaffirm that our 1865 Native Rights Act that declared all New Zealand Maori to be natural-born subjects of Her Majesty, and that the Queen's law and jurisdiction this is a different one. All right. There's a bit of skullduggery going on here. More skullduggery. The original Native Rights Act, I don't know if you can see it, it says here, an act to declare that the Maoris shall be deemed to be natural-born subjects of Her Majesty, and to declare that the jurisdiction of the Queen's Courts of Law extends over all persons and properties of all Her Majesty's subject. So all descendants of the ships and all Maoris and all people born to New Zealand were under the protections of the 1688 Bill of Rights. But there is a bit of skullduggery, because in this one, they have only said that it only applies to the Maori, and they have removed the section that says extends over the persons and properties of all Her Majesty's subjects. That has been removed, and it only says natural-born subjects and whether Her Majesty's courts of law within the colony have any jurisdiction. So this has been changed quite a bit. It doesn't say exactly, and it also removes all the people. It only includes the Maori. So when I did my declaration, I asked for two things. Oh, where's my declaration? I asked for two things. The first thing I said, to please consolidate the 1865 Native Rights Act, and please write a new declaration deeming us, all of us, to be under the protections of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth and the United Kingdom and Ireland, as it pleased Almighty God. Secondly, I asked, this was for all European people. Secondly, I asked for the Act to declare that the will of 1865 and the will of 1688 were confirmed and continue to be the rights of the New Zealand people and all Commonwealth people, actually. Secondly, I asked that if the 1688 Bill of Rights could be attached to S28, and I also said that if the 1688 were part of S28, then we would, in the other submissions, we would no longer be bound by United Nations law. And thirdly, I asked that, what I asked is that if there were two declarations, if there was a declaration of inconsistency and a declaration of our indubitable constitutional rights, which declaration would prevail to be the upper house. And the reason why I wrote this is, what a lot of you don't know is that in the 1993 electoral law, there are two laws in there. One is Section 55. Now, under the 1688, I can find it here. Under the 1688 supremacy law, foreigners are not allowed in our parliament. And they have filled our parliament and filled our courts in New Zealand with more than 60% of that are foreigners, okay? And that is forbidden under our 1688. And when they wrote the 1993 electoral law, they said If anyone takes an oath or a declaration to, or has any allegiance to a foreign power, their seat in Parliament would be vacated. And that means if they're a dual citizen to any other country, they're not permitted to be in New Zealand Parliament. In 2006, Helen Clark changed that law, and she said, despite what it says in 55, anyway, even if you are allegiant to another foreign power, you still may be in Parliament. And so here we have two laws. We have one law that comes under the Supremacy Law of 1688, which forbids foreigners in Parliament. And if there are foreigners in Parliament, we can go to the court and ask for a declaration to demand that those foreigners stand down because they're allegiant to foreign powers. And 60% of our Parliament are allegiant to foreign powers. So they should not be in our Parliament for a start. However, in here, this section 55AA that was inserted, if there were to be a declaration for the 1990 Bill of Rights, that would come under the non-discrimination, and they would be able to get a declaration of inconsistency if I were to demand that all the foreigners leave our Parliament. So I have asked the judge which one would prevail. Now, it's very interesting to me that they've managed to get their new case in asking for a declaration of that using the 1990, they're asking for a declaration to confirm the 1990 Bill of Rights. And I'm asking for a declaration to say that the 1990 Bill of Rights is repugnant to our law. It seems very interesting to me that they are getting their cases, I'm submitting my cases first, and then they are submitting their cases carbon copy to mine that are opposed to my cases, and their cases are being accepted. Now, this has happened 2 times now. I'm presently waiting for the court because they said they wanted the 2 signatures. And I have sent that, and I've still not heard from the court, but they have accepted my case. But strangely enough, they have submitted their case asking for a declaration of inconsistency in regards to the 1990 Bill of Rights, and their case has been accepted. So I'm saying, now I'm going to show you a little surprise here. I'll turn all of this off. I don't know if all of you can get your head around any of that, but I'll be making videos in regards to all of this, and I shall continue to make videos to let you know how my court case is going, because I do want to keep it in the public arena, because now that we know that there's some skullduggery going on, or there may not be, but in my perception there is, especially since S28 has never been used in the history of New Zealand, and I'm the first person to ever use S28, and it has suddenly turned up in the court, and I have been preempted. So, but I did get this little notice here. I don't know if you can see it, but I was chatting on a video site, and I don't know if you can see it, but I was having this little chat on the video site, on the Facebook, and I was making comments to this person. And the person turned around and said to me some very racist things. He turned around, I think I'll go to number 1. I won't read it all. But this person had said to me, he had said, this person said, don't you worry, we are a democratic society. We are willing to nourish and even help Pākehā, which is a rude word for the Anglo people, understand that their karma has come to bite them. Labour has a strong Maori executive, so 3 Waters is just the start. this is where they've taken all of our waters and put it in the hands of one tribe against our will. She said, we're just starting there, and there's going to be a co-sovereignty, and the Maori version suggests that we should share. This is a person called Forrester Hilton has written this, and wait till you see what Forrester... Now remember Forrester Hilton, because she has said this is just the beginning, and she has said the karma is coming to bite you white people in the ass. Karma's coming to bite you in the ass. And the Maori, through their tikanga law, has said that they're going to share with the 370 million refugees that they've been attached to in the United Nations. Now this man goes on to say, the other man that I was fighting with, I said, he said, we all know the white races are coming to an end and the demise. Yous will literally return to your natural position beneath our feet, is what he said. And then after that, now remember Forrester Hilton, because he gets talking with Forrester Hilton. And then he also turns around and says, the rightful guardians of the sea, yous have no knowledge of protecting the natural environments. We will return the rightful guardians of the garden. He's talking about the Garden of Eden. And he says, first of all, he says, you are the Neanderthal race, and you are from the whites. The whites are the people that come from the monkey gene, and the monkey gene is the white gene. And he says, we will return, we are all going to return as the rightful guardians of the garden. Now, this is the Jewish people that are believing that they are the rightful owners of all the earth, and that they will live in a beautiful garden of heaven without the white people of the monkey gene. He says, you are small-minded individual. Do you disobey your parents? Ha, ha, ha. Our people lived in tribes. Dumb as fuck off with your monkey-assed nonsense. Fuck off with your monkey-ass nonsense. You're an old bag, and your expiry date is nearly over, and I can't wait till you're gone. And then he says, laugh out loud, you come from the monkey gene. Now, then he turns around and says, Kate Floss, you do realise that you are really the slaves for China. Since China is your parents' country, laugh out loud, ha ha ha. You Caucasians need to know who you really are. Here's your ancestor, and he's showing the picture of the monkey. He says, wrong, you little ignorant, speak up, you know nothing, monkey Europeans. The practice of cannibalism arrived with the fleet. Laugh out loud, ha ha ha. You know nothing. The fleet is not the senior tribe on this land. Ha ha ha. And then he says, we ate the animals. Here's have a listen to what he says. We ate the animals, and any half-breed was considered to be food by the African slaves, which were also sent from America to fill the Pacific. So America sent the African people all through the Pacific to breed through the Pacific people so that they would be considered half-caste. And all native Maori have bred through the English and Irish, and they are all half-caste. And in his mind, any half-breeds are to be the fodder and the food of the wandering Jews, is what we are supposed to be, since we all come from the monkey gene, apparently from him. Now, let me awaken that small pea-sized brain now that there were slaves brought from Africa to America to wipe out the natives by the religions that were taking them there to wipe out the natives and assimilate the tribe. Ngāpuhi have done this. Mātua has been recognised as one of these slave ships imported from America and Africa. A lot of interesting things going on here. Now, but that's not what I really want to show you. Now, he was engaged in conversations with this person called Forrester Hilton. Remember Forrester Hilton, who said that the karma was going to come back to bite the white people in the ass? Right in the ass. Wow. She's then turned around and said something about, no, I do not, but don't worry about that. She says, very interestingly, she says, I am a servant of the High Court. So she says she's working down at the High Court, having been involved practically as a lawyer in treaty settlement process, legal precedence and history and intimacy of recent sovereign seabed and foreshore title judgments. That not only did they take our waters that she had just mentioned and put them in the hands of one tribe, and then that is under the control now of the United Nations. They've also taken our seabed and foreshore and put it in the hands of one tribe, and that is also going under the control of the United Nations. She has said that she was involved in both areas. And she said to me, this means that I am very conversant with the latest court perspectives. Now, she's working down there at the High Court, so she reckons. So I'm saying I'm very suspicious about why my court cases seem to be the things that I have put into my court cases that have never been used in the history of New Zealand are suddenly turning up in the people that I'm fighting against court cases using the same laws and trying to get the United Nations laws infused into our New Zealand law, and it's all been done down at the court, and they've only discovered how to do it because of my case that uses S28. And she's saying that she's very involved with the court cases down at the High Court. And she's basically said she's working against the Anglo people. So that's what she said. So I'm going to be asking for an investigation into this, who she is, what's going on down at the High Courts. Got all the evidence. My case is still in there. I'm making this public, and I'm making every single thing that I do public. If anything happens to me, Kate Floss, these people here, Forrester Hilton, these people here, I'm making it public. It's up there on YouTube. If anything happens to me, it's out there for the public to know that the Commonwealth is under attack and they are using our native people to take over our countries. They're trying to bring down, I believe, in my conspiracy theory, they're attempting to bring down the monarch. they're attempting to bring down the royal institution, and they're using all of our native people to do it, and they're using the human rights and the United Nations to do it, in my conspiracy theory. And I'm saying that we need all the Commonwealth people to open up your freaking eyes to what they're up to. I'm calling it out. I support Her Majesty the Queen. I support my 1688 Bill of Rights. I stand under all of my Protestant protections. I'm standing up for the Protestant people, and I'm standing up against the three churches that are trying to usurp and put the Protestant people back into slavery. They're determined to put us back into slavery. I know this video isn't that wonderful, and it's probably pretty hard to understand, but it is what it is. Okay, Floss signing out.